Hey guys, welcome to another Mr. R show. I'm Ashton.
And I'm Andy.
Hey guys, welcome to another Mr. R show. This is gonna be a new series me and Andy are starting up. It is gonna be the Presidential Smackdown. So welcome to our introduction. Me and Andy, we love talking about presidents, and for the longest time we wanted to do a versus series. Didn't exactly know how to do it, but the new political machine came out a few months ago, and we're gonna start doing some interesting matchups and do it in an NFL style weekly by weekly conference type of match system. So what that means is we have three conferences for both Republicans and Democrats with three candidates in each. Andy, you want to go through who's in each what conference, and we'll show you the candidates a little bit later.
So, guys, like he said, it's the President's Showdown, Republicans and Democrats, in NFL style, division by division, then playoff kind of style. Let's go through each division now. In the DNC North, you have John F. Kennedy, Harry Truman, and FDR. In the DNC South, you got Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Andrew Jackson. And then the DNC West is Obama, LBJ, and Woodrow Wilson. Those are your 9 Democratic presidents in their 3 division respected. And going to the Republican side, the RNC North is George H.W. Bush, Dad Bush, Taft, and Teddy Roosevelt. And the RNC South is George W. Bush, Son Bush, Eisenhower, and Lincoln. And then rounding up in the RNC West is Reagan, Nixon, and Ford. The way this playoff format will work is each division, so like DNC North, DNC South, will send one winner respectively to the playoffs. However, there are 4 spots for each conference, Democrat and Republican. That 4th spot is the wild card. So out of the remaining teams that did not qualify or did not win their division, the one with the highest record and best performance will move on and become that wild card team.
Mhm.
So you have 4 from each conference. That's 8 total presidents moving on to the ultimate playoffs.
And Andy, it'll be very interesting when we go through this to see the final eight, and then see who makes it to the Super Smackdown. Because this is the Presidential Smackdown, and we're gonna have some wild twists and turns. We're gonna have some comebacks, I assume. Some really interesting storylines, and it's all simulated. It's not me and him playing; it's simulated, so it's in the fates, the hands of the presidential gods, and we'll kind of see who is the ultimate match.
Ashton, I think it's time that we'll go through each president and just give you guys the stats. And then next week, we're going to jump right into the game. So let's go ahead and start with the stats. Our first president up from the DNC North is John F. Kennedy.
He's
Here we
sleepy.
go, guys. This is John Kennedy, home state of Massachusetts. You guys know that. 35th president of the United States. His stats are as follows: stamina, sleepy; charisma, warm; intelligence, slow; media bias, open; support, experience, insider; minority appeals, typical; and he's a very rich man. Now, real quick, we are using DLC candidates from the Steam workshop, so these are not our personal candidates. We might have a little bit different, but we're going off of already previously made candidates to make it also a little bit easier for us. Ashton, do you agree with this, or do you see anything different that John F. Kennedy's stats show?
So Andy, I don't know about the stamina. Everything else kind of comes off to me as very JFK-ish. I always thought he had a lot of stamina, and he was very charismatic. Now the media was very biased towards him, so I think that's good. His experience, I think he wasn't as high on in real life. So, like you said, we're not always going to agree with the things people made with this candidate, but that's fine. It'll be interesting to see how he stacks up to our next candidate.
Next up, we have Harry Truman. He's got active stamina, typical charisma, sharp intelligence, loathed by the media, an insider experience, some minority appeal, and poor starting money. He was a very poor man coming into the presidency, vice presidency under FDR, so that makes a lot of sense there. Intelligent wise, maybe not so sharp. I wouldn't give him that high of an intelligence. And media bias was loathed. I know the media didn't like him that much, but I don't think it was this much of a hate relationship that this DLC has him. But still, all around, is pretty much what Harry Truman was as a president. Last in the DNC North is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's another sleepy stamina guy with warm charisma, dim intelligence. I don't know about that one. Open support with media bias, respectable experience, a lot of minority appeal, and he's very poor. My initial reactions, like I said, his intelligence I think is a little low, but other than that, it seems about right.
So, yes, Andy, absolutely, you're correct. I don't necessarily agree with his intelligence. Stamina seems right given his condition. He wasn't out running around clearly. So I think it's a decent, better than the last one.
First off in the DNC North is the peanut farmer himself, Jimmy Carter. Active stamina, warm charisma, average intelligence. So far, so good with him. But his media bias is one of the worst. I think that says
Loathe.
loathed.
Yeah, loathe.
Experience as an insider. Minority appeal, very little, and he's a very rich man. Honestly, that's the most accurate one I've seen so far.
Yes, Andy, I will definitely agree with you. That's very accurate for him. I don't know if I would put him rich. He was only a peanut farmer, but can't get everything.
Moving on in the DNC South is Bill Clinton, everyone's favorite liar about the Monica Lewinsky scandal. His stamina is normal, warm charisma, sharp intelligence, open support with the media bias, insider experience, some minority appeal, and average starting money. So far, he is probably the most influential, like
Well-rounded.
he's well-rounded candidate. He is the highest rating so far, and the only thing you can say negative is his stamina, which is still average with neutral.
Yes,
Next
Andy,
is
I agree. He's definitely the most well-rounded, and I feel like Andy that will probably do him the best. I don't know. I haven't played many simulations in this game. So I feel like a well-rounded candidate will, on average, do better than the more niche candidates over a simulation period like we're doing. So these candidates are doing 8 games. So 8 games and they have 2 buys. I really think that favors a more average candidate than the niche ones.
rounding off the DNC South is Andrew Jackson, a very intimidating man to say the least. Has active stamina, typical charisma, genius intelligence, loathed by the media, respectable with experience, little minority appeal, and average starting money. All that kind of makes sense. He's one of the smartest candidates we're going to see, which could very well help him in this long stretch of games. But versus Bill Clinton, he might struggle in that DNC South.
Yes, Andy. I feel like the minority appeal may hurt him in the general elections in some of those swing states like North Carolina and Florida and Georgia. So I feel like against other Democrats, it won't be as bad, but I definitely think Andy he's gonna get hurt a lot against the Republicans in those those R versus D matchups in the regular season.
On to the last Democratic division, the DNC West, kicking it off with the most recent Democratic president, Barack Obama. Active stamina, magnet charisma, sharp intelligence, tingly media bias. I don't know what that means, but it's definitely favorable. Respectable experience, one of us with a minority appeal, and average starting money. So he is the best candidate. He was a lot better, well-rounded than Clinton was. I think his lowest is still above average. So Barack Obama is right now the clear favorite to win out on the DNC West.
Yes, Andy, I don't disagree with you. All those make sense. I mean, Barack Obama in real life was a once in a lifetime type of candidate, and going into this marathon, not just a sprint, I feel like he probably has the best chance. But that's you got to play the games, and even the best teams end up not making it playoffs sometime. And I feel like Obama is probably the most likeliest so far.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how these long games, these stamina. How many games can these candidates win against each other? When we might get an Obama Reagan matchup. How will that fare? It's very interesting to find out. But let's move on to Lyndon B. Johnson, number 2 in the DNC West. You looking at his stats right now, everything seems normal, normal stamina, typical charisma, smart intelligence. He's liked by the media, insider experience, typical minority appeal, and tycoon starting money. So decent money, decent media bias. But the problem is he's not the most charismatic and he's not the most stamina ridden candidate. So that could hurt him in a long, long season like this, along with the likability rating. But still, he is a media darling and will be a force in that DNC West.
Yes, Andy, I think he's one of the only people to have tycoon money we've seen, so it'll be interesting to see how much that really helps him versus the other candidates.
Rounding up the Democratic candidates, the Democratic Conference, and the DNC West is Woodrow Wilson, a very quiet president. He is the only doctor also to be president, so that might help him. But you got the normal stamina, warm charisma, average intelligence, which is kind of weird for him to be a doctor and have less intelligence than someone like Andrew Jackson. Indifferent media bias, respectable experience, typical minority appeal, and frugal starting money. So that money might be a problem for Woodrow Wilson. The only thing I disagree with is his intelligence, but other than that, it seems pretty good for Woodrow Wilson, but he is an underdog in that DNC West.
Yes, Andy, Woodrow Wilson, decent stats, overall, don't necessarily agree with the intelligence, like you say. So, Andy, our first is coming from the RNC North, and this is George H.W. Bush. He has normal stamina, a warm charisma, a average intelligence. He's disliked by the media. He has respectable experience, unappealing to minorities, but he is rich. Any comments? I think these are decent stats. Starting money. It'll be interesting to see what's better, but more stamina or more money. I feel like that's like two of the biggest attributes, and charisma, I guess, too. Stamina allows you to do more things during your turn, and obviously more money gives you more money every turn. So, or well, starting money gives you starting money, and that can give you bigger boost at the start.
Yeah, I would say pretty much all of George H.W. Bush's stats are what you would expect from the real life man. I would say his charisma is maybe a little bit too high. He was not the most charismatic guy. Yes, he was very soft spoken, but coming after Reagan in real life, that is not what the country really wanted. They wanted, you could come from Reagan, this very charismatic guy. So I'm not saying he has a bad charisma, but I would say more of a neutral kind of middle of the ground charisma. But still, he will be a force in that RNC North.
So, Andy, William Taft is up next. He is sleepy. He is a cold fish. uh, he is smart, but disliked. He's an insider, typical minority pill, and a tycoon. I'm gonna say it, Andy. I actually think this is pretty accurate for Taft.
Oh yeah, 100%. Taft was one of those good old boys back when the monopolies were still part of the country. So tons of money, tycoon money, like it says. But people did not like him. The commoners really hated this man. Oh, I wouldn't say hated, but they really didn't relate to Taft at all, which is why you get this cold fish charisma, and Taft is a big man, a large man, so he's pretty sleepy when it comes to stamina.
So up next we have good old Theodore Roosevelt. Andy, he is sleepy with warm charisma, average intelligence. He's liked, respectable, with some minority appeal, and he is poor. Overall, I don't necessarily agree with these attributes, but he's pretty average, literally just average, besides stamina and money, the two most important things. So I think he has some downsides to him, and he probably won't get out of the regular season.
Yeah, I don't know why this DLC creator put Sleepy as Theodore Roosevelt, who was, in the army and the military and was a rough rider, as Sleepy Stamina. But hey, we didn't make these. I would say he's above average, especially with his charisma and the media bias. There was a very loved president, but we'll see. Anybody can win any game day. He might do something in the RNC North, but that's going to be a very weak division in the Republican. But Ashton, let's move on to the RNC South.
Andy, here we have at the RNC South our first candidate from there, George W. Bush.
Did you?
So, Andy, we have our next candidate from the RNC South, George W. Bush. He has a active stamina. He is typical. Sharp intelligence. He is loath, respectable, unappealing, and a tycoon. So the only thing I disagree with is no offense to George W. Bush, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to presidents.
Yeah, I can agree with that, Ashton. Eh, strategery will always be his lasting words, but I mean that's about everything else is similar. Typical charisma seems about right for good old W. Bush.
So up next, Andy, we have good old Ike. And with Ike, we have someone who is sleepy, warm, average, liked, little experience, a lot of minority appeal, and who's frugal. Yeah, this actually makes somewhat sense to me. He was a general. He wasn't very energetic. He was kind of hands off, but he was very charismatic. He was average intelligence. I don't agree with that, but he was liked. He did have little experience in Washington, but he had good minority appeal when it comes to a Republican, and he was frugal.
Yeah, I can agree with pretty much everything there. Being that military general, he's not going to be the smartest person, but he is still very well liked, very respected. Has not a lot of experience because he's not a politician, and he's going to be sleepy because of his age when he became president.
All right, Andy, our last candidate from the RNC South is Abraham Lincoln, good old honest Abe. He has normal stamina, warm charisma, sharp intelligence, open support by media. He is an insider experience, a lot of minority appeal for clear reasons, and average starting money. A lot of this makes sense. I think he is the clear favorite in this division. What do you think?
I think this Abraham Lincoln kind of looks like a stoner. I'm not gonna lie. That I'm not trying to be mean to the guy who made this DLC, but that's not close really to Abe Lincoln, other than the weird side face beard. I don't know. Outside of his appearance, this is Abe Lincoln. He was very well liked, of course. The North, the South, what went down with the Civil War, but one of our greatest presidents, and should be the winner in the RNC South. But you know how games go. He could lose some we don't see coming.
And our last division is the RNC West. And our first candidate is Ronald Reagan. Good old Reagan has active stamina. He's magnetic, sharp, like an insider, typical minority appeal, and a tycoon. Most of this makes sense for me, Andy. Probably besides his starting money.
Actually, I think his starting money is accurate. He was a actor, so he would have, I wouldn't say the most money out of any candidate, but he had a good pocket of cash there. And the rest of his stats make sense. He was one of the most well-liked presidents in his tenure, other than maybe FDR at the time. So you see that in his charisma, and even his experience though is kind of shaky. I don't think he would be that high of experience, him being that outside actor kind of guy, but it's still one of the best accurate stats, and he should be a favorite early on in this RNC West division.
So, Andy, our next candidate is Richard Nixon with an active stamina, typical charisma, sharp. He is loath, respectable, experience, unappealing by minorities, and rich. Um, that's, I think that sums up Richard Nixon pretty mightily.
Oh yeah, Nixon was very hated with media bias because you know how Watergate went down. And on top of that, his kind of war on crime was not the highest in regards to minorities. You can see that there, but it makes sense. But yeah, that's just Nixon. We'll see how far he will go in this President Smackdown playoffs.
And last, from our RNC crop of candidates, and the guy who replaced Nixon after he got removed, Gerald Ford. Andy, he starts out with normal, warm charisma, average intelligence, indifferent media, respectable experience, typical minority appeal, but he is frugal. I definitely think this is the most average or like consistent of the Republicans. Just basic everything, and I don't disagree with any of them.
Yeah, for the most part, all these DLC makers have done a good job. We have one or two discrepancies in our personal takes on it, but they did a good job, and I'm very excited to see who wins this thing, Ashton.
So, guys, I hope you guys find the idea interesting. Me and Andy are excited to get this idea off its wheels and into the air. Uh, upcoming Friday, we're going to be releasing our first episode. That's going to have one main game we watch, and that will be Lincoln versus JFK. So I'm very excited to see who wins that. And then we'll put in highlights of the other games. I hope you guys tune in. If you guys want to comment down below who's your favorite to win the Super Smackdown, go ahead and put it down below. You can put predictions for wins and losses. You know, I really think the highest score Andy will probably have is 7 wins. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a 8 or 9 win candidate. What about you? Out of or actually, I think they can only have 8 wins. So six wins, 6 or 7 wins. Andy, what do you think will be the highest win total of any candidate?
Honestly, Ashton, I could see someone going undefeated. If they get the right matchups and avoid some of the heavy hitters, they could squeak by with some wins because some of these divisions are looking kind of weak. So they got to play some of those candidates 2 times. Those are four. That could be 4 wins, and pick some off if they get some of the easier opponents. You know, we're going to be doing kind of a random generator for the outside games, but I could see them going undefeated. But guys, we're going to be putting week one, the schedule for week one, on our Twitter at the Mr. R Show. So go follow that, guys. Well, we're going to see all the week one matchups and the marquee game again, Lincoln versus JFK. We'll do that every week so you guys know what games will be on it and you can help us predict what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. We hope you guys enjoy this idea. It's going to be fun. We're very excited to see it, and we'll see you guys on Friday.